Nolin and Nolin, and that's what you do for them. And I find that very interesting because when I first learned that they had a in-house evaluator, social worker, I thought that was really intriguing and kind of a great concept. And the first question I had was, how does that differ from a social investigator or a guardian ad litem that's appointed in the court system? And what role do you play in their investigation and with their client?
There's probably two big differences. One is I'm not not court appointed, and then the other being that the evaluation tools that I use look at 42 particular components that research, such as the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study and the child welfare system, like federally and local, state level, they look at risk and protective factors for child abuse and neglect. So there's 42 areas that I'm evaluating. One big difference is because I'm working with a private investigative firm, I have the advantage, the opportunity to look at evidence. So any evaluation that I do is objective, and it's based on what we know from research and then what the investigators were able to uncover in the course of their work. So, for example, sometimes in the course of divorce, the issue of whether someone has returned to using substances may come up. And so, which is well known to be a risk factor, but we can't make decisions based on conjecture or assumptions. However, if the investigators can uncover a pattern of repeated substance use, that's very different than someone who's been in recovery for several years, maintaining a job, maintaining a home. So my role is primarily looking at all of the evidence, all of the records that's been gathered, and then looking for those protective factors and those risk factors to help pinpoint what's in the best interest of the children.
It's really cool that you kind of are there in the beginning,
Mhm.
that you're helping the investigators build a better case, that you're also, kind of acting as a filter in some ways as to probably what evidence is relevant, what factors does it go to. Um, what I find in our practice a lot is people come in and they'll have what they think is evidence, or they may have actual concrete evidence, but the evidence isn't relevant to any factor that we might be looking at for child custody, or that it's so remote in time and so old that sometimes people bring up, well, when he was a juvenile, and I'm like, well, did he have kids when he was a juvenile? Because if the kids aren't around, or it predates the kids, it's going to be hard to establish a nexus between the evidence or the allegation and the children. You were talking about the factors you used, and one of those is that ACEs that you were referring to.
Yes. So the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is a small part of it. It gives us it can be somewhat predictive of early trauma, how it can affect us later in life, health wise, risk for substance use, those sort of things. And really, I think part of the way the evaluation that I do is it's really examining what the strengths are just as much as the risk factors, so that when the report is written and it's shared with the parent, and also in their conversations with me when I'm gathering information, my goal is to also build in those strengths, to point those out to parents where they're doing well. Um, and of course, areas where they may need a little bit of assistance or some guidance. The divorce process, I think, can be very difficult. Parents love their children and want the best for them. And sometimes we need a little bit of help knowing exactly what that is. 'Cause I don't think we often plan for a divorce. So we don't plan to co-parent separately. And then there's the introduction perhaps of step parents or, different family members. So being able to help parents understand where their children are or their adolescents are developmentally, and how the circumstances are affecting them, and giving them some tools in that process as well, that they can use immediately for their own reassurance. For example, if a parent is going through the divorce process and has some suspicions about their former partner, their estranged husband or wife, and the evidence isn't there, that doesn't always relieve that parent's concerns. So one of the things I'm able to do is share with them safety strategies, how you can prepare your child to adjust to having two homes with two rules and those sort of things without causing a child to be fearful or feeling like they have to be loyal to one parent or another. They're safe to love both parents. And I think one of the reasons that I was drawn to working with Nolan and Nolan is that opportunity. It's very often working in mental health, working with families. You do see families, whether it's divorce or there wasn't a marriage, and it can be very difficult for children to transition from home to home and adjust to two sets of rules and things. So the opportunity to help parents navigate that, whether it's what the court orders, but be able to navigate that so that they have the tools they need to help their child be resilient and be successful. And so that hopefully the parent can heal as well.